Okay, well, we are at the beginning of book 6, believe it or not. Book 6. Book 6 of the Lord of the Rings trilogy, Return of the King, uh, Chapter 1, The Tower of Cirith Ungol. Believe it or not. Oh my God. Yeah, this is very, very cool because we're going to go back to Sam and Frodo and also, you know who. So I'm going to read a couple of teaser pages to get things started. Hopefully, everyone is doing well. Okay, here we go. Chapter 1, The Tower of Cirith Ungol by JRR Tolkien. Now, Sam roused himself painfully from the ground. For a moment he wondered where he was, and then all the misery and despair returned to him. He was in the deep dark outside the undergate of the orc stronghold. Its brazen doors were shut. He must have fallen stunned when he hurled himself against them. But how long he had lain there, he had he did not know. Then he had been on fire, desperate and furious. Now he was shivering and cold. Far within he could hear faintly the voices of orcs clamoring, but soon they stopped or passed out of hearing, and all was still. His head ached, and his eyes saw phantom lights in the darkness, but he struggled to steady himself and think. It was clear, at any rate, that he had no hope of getting into the orc hold by that gate. He might wait there for days before it was open, and he could not wait. Time was desperately precious. He no longer had any doubt about his duty. He must rescue his master or perish in the attempt. The perishing is more likely and will be a lot easier anyway, he said grimly to himself as he sheathed things and turned from the brazen doors. Slowly, he groped his way back in the dark along the tunnel, not daring to use the elfin light. And as he went, he tried to fit together the events since Frodo and he had left the crossroads. He wondered what the time was. Somewhere between one day and the next, he supposed. But even of the days he had quite lost count. He was in a land of darkness, where the days of the world seemed forgotten, and where all who entered were forgotten too. I wonder if they think of us at all, he said, and what is happening to them all away there. He waved his hand vaguely in the air before him. But he was in fact now facing southwards as he came back to Sherlock's tunnel, not west, out westward in the world. It was drawing to noon upon the 14th day of March in the Shire reckoning, and even now Aragorn was leading the Black Fleet for Ligor, and Mary was riding with the rear down the South Wayne Valley, while in Minas Tirith flames were rising, and Pippin watched the madness growing in the eyes of Denethor. Yet amid all their cares and fear, the thoughts of their friends turned constantly to Frodo and Sam. They were not forgotten. They were far beyond aid, and no thought could yet bring any help to Samwise Hammer's son. He was utterly alone. He came back at last to the stone door of Orc Passage, and still unable to discover the catch or bolt that held it. He scrambled over so as as before and dropped softly to the ground. Then he made his way stealthily to the outlet of Shell's kennel, where the rags of her great web were still blowing and swaying in the cold airs. For cold, they seemed to stand after the noisome darkness behind. But the breath of them revived him. He crept cautiously out. All was ominously quiet. The light was no more than that of dusk at a day's end. The vast vapors that arose in Mordor and went streaming westward, passed low overhead, a great welter of cloud. The smoke now lit again beneath with a sullen glow of red. Sam looked upwards. The Orc Tower, and suddenly from its narrow windows lights stared out like small red eyes. He wondered if they were some signal. His fear of the orcs, forgotten for a while, and his in his. They were so signal. Oh, excuse me. And his wrath and desperation now returned. As far as he could see, there was only one possible course for him to take. He must go on and try to find a main entrance to the dreadful tower. But his knees felt weak, and he found that he was trembling. Drawing his eyes down from the tower and the horns of the cliff before him, he forced his unwilling feet to obey him, and slowly, listening with all his ears, peering into the dense shadows of the rocks beside the way, he retraced his steps past the place where Frodo fell, and still the stench of Shalem steps past the place where Frodo fell, and still the yeah, uh, still the stench of Shalem lingered, and then on and up until he stood again in the very cliff where he put on the ring and seen Shagrot's company go by. There he halted and sat down. For the moment he could drive himself no further. He felt that if once he felt beyond the crown of the past and took one step veritably down the land of Mordor, that step would be irrevocable. He could never come back without any clear purpose. He drew out the ring and put it on again. Immediately he felt great burden of its weight and felt afresh. But now, more strong and urgent than ever, the malice of the eye of Mordor, searching, trying to pierce the shadows that it made for its own defense, but which now hindered it in its unquiet and doubt. As before, Sam found that the hearing was sharpened, but that too, his sight of things of the world seemed thin and vague. The rocky walls of the path were pale, as it seemed through a mist, but still at a distance. He heard the bubbling of Shelob in her misery, and harsh and clear, and very close it seemed. He heard cries and clash of metal. He sprang to his feet and pressed himself against the wall beside the road, and he was glad of the ring, for here was another company of orcs on the march, or so at first he thought, and then suddenly he realized it was not so. His hearing had deceived him. The orc cries came from the tower whose top was nailed right above him on the left hand of the cliff. He shuddered and tried to force himself to move. There was plainly some devilry going on. Perhaps, in spite of the orders, the cruelty of the orcs had mastered them, and they were tormenting Frodo, or even savagely hacking him to pieces. He listened as he did so. A gleam of hope came to him. He could not be much doubt. There could not be much doubt there was fighting in the tower. The orcs must be at war among themselves. Shagrat and Gorbog had come to blows, faint as the hope that his guest brought him. It was enough to rouse him. There might be just a chance his love for Frodo rose above all other thoughts, and forgetting his peril, he cried. At once, the road turned left and plunged steeply down. Sam had crossed into Mordor. He took off the ring, moved it, maybe by some deep premonition of danger, though to himself he thought only that he wished to see more clearly. Better have a look at the words, he muttered. No good blundering about in a fog. Hard and cruel and bitter was the lad that met his gaze. Before his feet, the highest ridge of the Eiffel Duars fell steeply into great cliffs, down into the dark trough of the Eiffel Duar. Fell down into the dark trough on the farther side of which there rose another ridge, much lower its edge, notched and jagged with crags like fangs that stood out black against the red light behind them. It was the Grim Morgoth. The inner ring of the fences of the land. Far beyond it, almost straight ahead, across the wide lake of Markness, dotted with tiny fires, there was great burning glow. From it rose where it merged into billowing canopy that roofed it all with accursed land. Sam was looking at Arduin, the mountain of fire. Ever and anon, these furnaces far below its ashen cone would grow hot, and with a great surging and throbbing pour forth rivers of molten rock from chasms and channels. Some would find mm, some some would wind their way into the stony plain until they cooled and lay like twisted dragon shapes vomited from the tormented earth. In such an honor of labor, Sam beheld Mount Doom and the line of it, cut off the high street of the Eiffel Tower from those who climbed up the path from the west, now glared against the stark rock faces, so that they seemed to be drenched with blood. So, this is where we're back to where we were. That Frodo was stabbed by the spider, which they had a little cave, whatever, and so Sam had the ring. You had to get the password in order to keep holding on to the ring. Well, I'm going to be looking forward to continuing this read. But let's see. Hmm. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to start later today continuing this read. And then we're going to see what happens. I think with spoiler alert, I think we mostly do understand what happened in that tunnel. Anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and leave. Okay, everyone, please be careful. Safe travels. Make sure you take care. Make sure if you do anything at all, make sure you don't hurt yourself or someone else while you're doing it. Okay. Thank you. Good nighters.